This is the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast.
Exclusively on the Herd App Media Network.
Tell it to me straight up.
Hello, and welcome into the Straight Up Breakdown Podcast, proudly part of the Hail Varsity Network. I am Greg Smith, your why in the world did we have to get winter again when I thought we had fake spring going on, friend. Today I am joined by Hail Varsity staff writer Steve Marik. Steve, thank you for being back on the show. How are you, man?
My pleasure, Greg. I am doing fabulous right now. It's a wonderful time in wintry Nebraska, and we got some spring football in the mix, so it's been fun.
Yeah, we should not have spring football, state high school basketball, and like a freak snowstorm. And not even snowstorm is too strong. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean? Like a couple inches. If you listeners from Nebraska, we got a couple of inches of snow, a little bit of ice overnight, as if we aren't used to that. But we are not used to that during spring football and state high school basketball time.
Yeah, it's a interesting time for sure, but you know, we all live in this state and we've all experienced the kind of dramatic and kind of shifts that go on with the weather. So
yeah, absolutely. Now I'm going to jump right into it because each week of the show, we have a few segments that are mainstays of the show. And the first one is called Coach Speak, where we go over something that a player, a coach, or a talking head said, and then we kind of give you the straight up breakdown of what they meant.
Coach Speak to Real Talk.
And Steve mentioned spring football right off the rip. We're recording this at a little bit different time than I normally do. I usually record this Monday morning. We're doing Monday late afternoon, which gave us time to actually have Nebraska press conferences and availability today. And the quote comes from that time from defensive coordinator Eric Chinander when he was talking about Chris Kolarevic playing the nickel position in the defense. And you guys will know that is kind of the JoJo nickel, as we came to call it last year. Chinander said, quote, "It's been really nice to see him out there in space and being fluid. And I think we'll get a little more man coverage in as we keep moving through the install, and we'll see how he does with some man coverage. But everything he's done has been a really good job so far."
Let's break that down.
So, Steve, you were over there when Chinander said this. What do you think he meant by this?
Well, I think he just meant that you know, it's spring and they need to find a replacement for JoJo Domann, and there might not be one on the roster, but what they do have are three candidates who each bring something different to that position. And whichever candidate wins the job, whoever gets out there on the field at that kind of interesting, intriguing nickel position that I really love for some reason. Eric Chinander is going to tailor his defense to what they aren't good at, basically, and tailor the defense and, do things that help, they have their traits that they're good at. He's going to help them, help the defense, use their traits to their advantage and don't do what they aren't good at, basically. Now, the thing with JoJo is he was obviously pretty good at all the facets that you want the nickel to be really good at. He was 6'1", a little under 230 pounds. He was great at run support. He was really good at backside pursuit, running down plays, and he could hold his own for a little bit in man coverage. And that's exactly what that position entails, that nickel position entails. And, they're the three guys that they have in that room right now that are the kind of leading candidates for that. Isaac Gifford, Javin Wright, who they like to call Buddha, which I think is really cool. And then also Chris Kolarevic is the new guy in there this year. This will be his first spring playing and practicing as a nickel. So each guy brings their unique traits to it, and whichever one wins the job, Eric Chinander has been very vocal and upfront about, playing to their strengths and not kind of forcing them to be a JoJo, because I don't know if there is one on the roster.
Yeah, and that part of it is also really interesting to me when you talk about Chinander not wanting to force it, but also playing to their strengths, which will in turn make that player look better, right? And not trying to just force it and say it has to be a guy that can do all of the things JoJo can do, instead of just finding what that player that wins the job does best and then kind of rolling with it from there. And I actually think the thing that is just really interesting about this whole position and all of the talk about it to me is that it can be unique in that Nebraska can shift and mold that to the players that they have on the roster. They're not necessarily beholden to having to go out and recruit specific guys to play that, but you can go to any number of body types or types of guys with the way it looks like it's going and say, hey, we can see you in this role and we'll create kind of this role in this defense for you. And that ends up being a nice pitch and a way to then keep the guys on the roster that are working their way up kind of engaged and involved too, because if they know that Chenander is willing to kind of mold it to their skill set, then they, I think, can feel more comfortable that eventually their time will come too. I really think that the way that they're handling that is really neat. Now, we don't know if the results will end up coming out in the way that it did, when they had JoJo in that role. It's going to be tough to replicate that, just the production, because of how good and how multifaceted his skill set is. But I do think that that's one of the really intriguing storylines of trying to figure out what will happen with the 2022 defense. That is, I don't know if it's going like under the radar, because there are other really big things that they've got to figure out, like who's playing on the defensive line, right? But I do think that that's a really fascinating subplot.
Yeah, and to go back to your point about recruiting for that nickel position, it's kind of interesting to see like how they've done it, because sometimes things just might fall in your lap, just like it did with JoJo, how he started out as a safety, his career here as a safety, and just kind of physically grew bigger. Like that's just how his body turned out. With all the weight room and conditioning stuff, he ended up as a 6'1", 230 pounder. And kind of, I'm looking like the same thing that is happening with Buda Wright right now with Javin Wright. He got to Lincoln as a corner, a smaller guy, but right now he's not small. He's a very intriguing athlete at 6'4". He's listed at 6'4", 210 pounds, very long, very rangy. And what Eric Chenander was, I asked him about Javin last week, and he said that, since he started his career at corner, he had those coverages, those coverage abilities. It's what he was good at. So right now, if you put his coverage abilities in, and if he keeps the same speed and the same quickness and the same footwork, you have a really intriguing athlete at 6'4" and over 210 pounds who can move and knows what he's doing in man-to-man coverage. Now, again, like I was saying earlier about, each player has things that they're good at, and what they're not good at is can Javin Wright be as good as Isaac Gifford or Chris Kolarevic in run support? That's what Chenander needs to find out. And that's what he says he's using the spring to find out, because everybody has things that they're good at, and everybody has things that they're not good at. Javin Wright may be able to stick on some people in man-to-man coverage a lot better than those other guys can, but can he tackle as well as the other guys can? That's the kind of give and take that's going to be really fun to watch.
Yeah, it will be. And that's something that's kind of interesting. Like you see that at various positions. Travis Fisher, who also spoke today, has talked he's talked twice during the spring, and both times that he's talked with media, he's mentioned tackling in his time with us, right? And that has kind of stood out to me as something too, is when he's trying to figure out all of the mixing and matching that Fisher can do on the back end with the defense. And it's a similar thing as the nickel, where you've got guys that are really good at one thing, coverage, but then not the most willing tacklers. And you have guys that are very good at tackling or very willing to do it that still need to learn the coverage aspects of it. So there's a lot of that going in kind of in the back seven. And that is what like you said, a really good point, is that's a lot of what this spring is for. Like you've got to figure out all of those things. And that's what one of the things, and this is kind of talking about this Nebraska team coming up this season, is kind of a big picture thing on the entire team, is figuring out all of the puzzle pieces based on all of the guys that they brought in, all of the change with the coaching staff, change with philosophies, all of that, and trying to find how that all works together and how you can then create that into a team that can now go to a bowl game is the overall issue that the team is going to have. And I don't know that it's as easy as people, like fans especially, would hope that it's going to work out. It could take time, but that's why I think that this spring and like the coaches being patient with all of those guys and the people coming along, I think is really important. And it sounds like that's the case right now.
Yeah, there's just so much change on this team that it kind of seems I don't know, just not a great idea to like just think that everything is going to fit together and they're going to, get 6 wins and go to a bowl game and then everything's going to be on the swing up. But yeah, it's, everywhere you look, there's question marks and especially on the defense. And it goes back to Eric Shenander last week saying, I think he was asked something like, what's the kind of what in his opinion is the one of the top priorities of the defense. And he almost said immediately is figuring out that back end of the defense with the defensive backfield. Because Quentin Newsome, I really love what Quentin Newsome did at corner last year. And it seems like he's really kind of taking that leadership role and kind of thinking of himself as the guy in that DB room, which is good to see. Because I think he really played great last year as the first year starter. But yeah, then there's 3 other spots, and Miles Farmer, is he going to hold on to his safety spot? And another thing that Shenander was talking about is once they get those 4 starters figured out, then they're going to look at the backups. And is there a backup that they could slide down to that nickel position too? It's just, there's a lot of different, just components and moving parts here that it's just kind of hard to talk about sometimes because we don't really know, I guess how many and who all is working where and for how long. And it's fun to think about and fun to talk about, not fun to predict, I guess.
No, yeah, it's funny because we've talked about that before on the Hail Varsity YouTube page, is that I don't ask me to predict who's going to be, especially in the defensive backfield, because I feel like I change my mind every day. And that will be fun for all of us. I'm sure will create some headaches for the coaching staff, but it's fun for us leading up. We got a lot of time to figure that out. But one thing I definitely wanted to get with you about, Steve, here is that, you covered the women's basketball beat, did a great job of that all season long, your first year on the beat, and the team ended their Big Ten tournament hopes and a loss recently against Iowa. And there's 2 things I really kind of want to ask you. One is kind of an overall thing about kind of your impressions of their run during that tournament. And then B, like, what do you make of like kind of the Caitlin Clark hatred that Nebraska fans seem to have? Because I find that fascinating when I see it on Twitter every time Nebraska plays Iowa.
Well, I find it fascinating too, but we'll table that for the second part of this answer. So the first part, I've had so much fun watching and getting to know the players and Amy and following them game by game. It's been really fun to do. And they seem like they are more tight knit than ever right now. After everything they've been through with the assistant coach and the player getting removed from the roster. And it's just, I think everything off the court may have made everything on the court tighter and inside the locker room tighter. I really do believe that. And they did fall short, and I know they were winning a conference championship. And Amy Williams, the head coach, really seemed ticked off at the post-game press conference that I watched on Zoom afterwards. But it's just adding more fuel to the fire for when they get into the NCAA tournament. Because I don't think there's any doubt about it. They will go dancing for the first time since 2018, I think it was. So yeah, it's just been. Everything seems like it's going really, 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 really well right now. And to get to your other point about Caitlin Williams, like, yeah, Iowa has their number, 3 wins over them. But look, Caitlin Williams is an incredible basketball player. She's very, very good, and she could beat a lot of teams by herself sometimes. Now, she does get a lot of attention, I guess, for things outside of basketball when, like, in between whistles, maybe, there's a lot of talking with officials, a lot of palms raised towards the air and everything. But here's my opinion of it. I know that she's an incredible basketball player, and I know that she's incredible, an incredibly good thing for the women's game in general. Mm-hmm. Now, me personally, I don't find all her antics, or whatever you want to say, the theatrics, I don't find it at all annoying at all. Like, none of it. Like, I know she's playing a game, and yeah, it's a game, it's entertainment, and she is being entertainment. That's how I view it, really. So yes, do I find some of the things that she does on the court maybe annoying? Like, sure. Yeah. But does it, like, maybe affect my or impact my opinion of her? Absolutely not. She's an incredible player. Every coach in America would want to have Caitlin Clark on the roster, Amy Williams included.
Right.
And, I don't know, maybe it's just like with Nebraska fans, they lose the game and they don't want to, and they lose it to a player like Caitlin Clark, who's doing a lot of extracurricular stuff. It irks fans the wrong way, I guess. But me personally, no, I look the other way. I don't really care about that stuff. She can act how she wants if she's going to put up 41.
Right. And I think that's ultimately what it is. And I think a lot of this has to do with, it's a rival in Iowa. And
Yeah.
Iowa also has their number. She put up some incredible numbers. And I wish I had pulled the stats before the pod to have them right in front of me. But what she averaged against Nebraska this season was off the charts as well. So that plays a role into it. But you also have to have, and I always say this about sports in general, that you have to have a kind of a villain in your eyes. It may or may not, that person may or may not actually be a villain. It's most likely just someone on your rival team that's really, really good, right? Like that happens all the time and we see it all over the place. And so I would suspect that Caitlin Clark takes this as a great compliment and is eating up every bit of this. But for Nebraska fans, it's super annoying. But I do want to know too from you is that Nebraska also has, Alexis Markowski, the freshman of the year in the Big Ten. So obviously a freshman. Jazz Shelley is just a sophomore, right?
Yeah, she's listed as a sophomore.
Yeah, after transferring to Nebraska. And so, and the season is not over. They still have the tournament after, being, labeled a quote unquote bubble team, which they took exception with. And so I don't want to, do a postmortem on the season necessarily, but where do you see kind of the future of this team? Because it seems like the future is still brighter, even from where they are now.
It's incredibly bright. So Alexis Markowski, and she deserves every bit of this, is the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, and she absolutely deserves it. She's going to be a key foundation, a piece of the foundation for this program for the next 4 years, and she absolutely deserves all the accolades that she got. But Nebraska has another true freshman from tiny small town Nebraska who's just as good, I think, in Allison Widener. She is really, really good. She's physical. She doesn't back down from everybody. She goes straight from Humphrey St. Francis to Big Ten basketball, and she's not missing a beat. I mean, it's been incredible.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. Not a lot of people, just like a lot of people didn't think that Alexis Markowski was going to step off the court at Pius and do what she's doing right now against Big Ten centers, but she is. And a lot of people were kind of questioning, how's this girl from a small D2 school in Northeast Nebraska gonna step onto the court against the Big Ten guards and play? Well, she's a lot tougher than a lot of Big Ten guards that she's played, in my opinion. And, she's really hard to stop north to south getting to the hoop. If she wants to get to the rim, most likely like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 times she's getting to the hoop. And not a lot of guards I saw have stopped her. Her game is going to, Allison's game is going to still grow as she goes on and learns. And so is Alexis's. I mean, they're going to continue to add to their games, and Amy Williams is going to continue to devise game plans and build a roster around a star guard and a star center forward. So, I mean, the future is incredibly bright for Nebraska women's basketball, in my opinion.
And part of that too is I think really highly of Amy Williams, and I just think that she's such a good coach, and the team seems to want to play for her so much, and they all kind of rally around her. And I think maybe most importantly, they take on her personality as well. As you mentioned a while back about Amy kind of being ticked off in that press conference, people, and you would know better than most being around her for the entire season, is people describe her very much as a very fierce competitor, right? And so that when that rubs off on your team as well, they really have no choice for that to rub off on them, because you're not going to play for that type of coach if you don't have some of that in you as well. And I think that ends up serving the team in the long run too, because even when you have a dip in talent, you're able to then overcome that just off of pure grit. They don't have a dip in talent, I'm not saying that, but it also helps when you have that grittiness to you as well.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And it makes me think towards the beginning of the season when It was my first year covering. It is my first season covering the women's team, and it's really my first interaction with them, and especially Amy Williams. So you have me at the beginning of this season kind of talking with Amy before the games even start, and she's like all smiles, just an incredibly nice human being, everything. She's just like everything you want in like covering a head coach. And then you see her like in the Big Ten conference, and she is fire. She is just like, she's got passion, and her players see that, and they respond positively. It's just like she's got some fire to her right now, and it's awesome to watch. And you could tell that the girls play even harder for her when she does that. And then in the post-game press conference, she simmers down, and she's like back to the awesome, very nice human being that she is at heart. So that's what you want from the coaches, to be able to flip the switch and talk to you like after the game. And she's been awesome at that. And also just kind of showing her passion and fire during the games too. So it's just a very fun, awesome program to be able to cover for the first year.
Yeah, absolutely. And make sure you guys are checking out hailvarsity.com to see Steve's continued coverage of all the things that are going to happen with that team in the NCAA tournament. But every week we end the show with a segment that we call Put Them on Blast, which is my favorite segment of the week, where we basically put someone on blast or something that they did or said.
Put them on blast.
This week, I'm going to actually go first, and I'm going to go with one that actually just happened. I had something else planned, and I had to change my mind because it's added really breaking news over the last hour, where Calvin Ridley, Falcons wide receiver, has been suspended for a year. I think they may have even used the term banned for a year from the NFL for betting on Falcons games. Now, he did this while away from the team, so technically he wasn't playing and involved in betting, but that's neither here nor there. For this, and then he actually just tweeted a little while ago, calm down, I don't have a problem, I only bet $1,500, when it was reported that he also lost millions. Part of this is a 18 parlay that also needed the Falcons to win, which listen, Lord help you if you're betting on the Falcons to win, even if you were a member of the Falcons, but I digress. So he has to go on blast for all of that. But there's a plot twist. The NFL also has to go on blast because the NFL is so swift to come down and drop the hammer on Ridley for gambling, which is technically by the book the right thing to do, but it's also very murky considering the NFL, when they released that statement about him being banned for a year, might as well have said sponsored by DraftKings, because there's always DraftKings commercials, there's MGM, there's all sorts of things that are happening. Bet online with the NFL, because they've cozied up to gambling and fantasy and all of that, because it's great for fan engagement, which is fine. But then it's also a little weird when you come down on players, even because it was in this little bit of a gray area with him not technically being with the team when he made these bets. But I will say this again, for the record, everyone in the situation is wrong. It's a really weird situation. And if I were Calvin Ridley's agent, I would advise him to stop tweeting right now. Was it Herm Edwards that said, don't hit send? Don't hit send. He needs to stop right now. But all of you, Calvin Ridley, NFL, going on blast.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for me here, kind of on the spot. But, Frankie Fiddler from UNO,
okay,
pairing up the Summit League. He's just like an amazing basketball player right now. He's another in-state guy that is really playing well for his team. He's a freshman at UNO, just got knocked out of the Summit League as an 8 seed against top seed South Dakota State. But he put up excellent numbers again. And I don't think that he is a member of the All Summit Newcomer League. And now I need to check my facts on that.
Okay.
But if he's not, that's crazy. And I'm calling out the Summit League voters. So Frankie Fiddler needs to be on the All Summit League newcomers list. That's my put him on blast.
It's interesting too, because you mentioned guys from in-state Nebraska that are out there playing basketball, and football happens too, but we're talking about basketball here. and playing well at other schools. And it feels like I think that, and Jacob Padilla would know this, and you know this too, like especially with state basketball going on right now, it feels like to me that Nebraska high school basketball is in a really good spot. Like it just feels like the competition is good. The players are really good right now. And there are a lot of teams out there making a living off of recruiting these Nebraska players, whether or not it's D1 or not. Like you're seeing a lot of these guys go on to have a lot of success. And the women too, as we were talking about a couple with Nebraska women's basketball as well. Like it just seems like Nebraska high school basketball is on the rise. I talk about the football being on the rise all the time, but basketball seems to as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, so I have confirmed it just now. Frankie Fiddler is not a member of that came out of a few days ago, the Summit League's all newcomer team. And that's just crazy to me. He's averaging almost 13 points per game. And let's just go through his game log here of like the past couple months. Against South Dakota State, Baylor Shireman, South Dakota State, shout out Aurora, Nebraska. He scored 34 points. That's amazing. A few games before that, Denver, 22. A few games before that, another 22. Another few games before that, at North Dakota, he put down 35 points. He had a game winner thrown in there against Denver, I believe, too. So, yeah, put him on blast. Summit League, be better. Frankie Fiddler deserves to be on the all-newcomer list. He's going to be first team all-conference next year, probably. I'm putting it down. Boy, just a lot of the statement being made by me right now. I don't mean to do that, but whatever.
No, it's fine. I'm gonna Cam is gonna pull that audio. Shouts to Cam for producing this, and we're gonna say Frankie Fiddler, all Summit League next year. That is totally fine. I'm with you on that. Put your hot take out there. That's not that hot.
That's not even a hot take.
It's not even a hot take. I said it. I'm loving it. It was because it's not that hot. Because he's playing good ball. But that's gonna do it for us this week. Subscribe to the podcast everywhere you listen to them. Rate us and leave us a 5-star review. If you leave 4, I'm inclined to think you're a hater, and nobody wants that. Make sure you're checking out the other podcasts on the Hail Varsity Network, the Mind Your Own podcast, the Varsity Club podcast, Nebraska Press Postgame Show, and the Hail Varsity Radio Show. Also, check out the Hail Varsity YouTube page. You can find me over there with recruiting question video of the week. Steve and I are on there with a football question or a football topic every week. And also today we did the post practice video as well. We're all over the place. You can also get after us on Twitter at Greg Smith HB and at Steve_Marik. I will catch you guys next week.
A Huda Media Production.